Hello. Today we're going to take a look at the amendment process, all right, to the Constitution. All right, we're going to look at the formal and informal amendments that we have to our Constitution. As we know, the Constitution has been formally amended 27 times. All right, we should all know the First Amendment, freedom of speech, press, religion, etc. And the 27th Amendment, passed in 1992, forbids pay raises to congressmen until after the next election. All right. Now, we need to know that when we ratify the Constitution, it is a two-step process. An amendment must be proposed first in Congress. All right. It becomes official when 2/3 of both houses of Congress pass the proposed amendment. All right. There's actually 6 amendments that have been passed by Congress but haven't met step 2. All right. But all amendments have to be proposed by Congress. You can also do this if you have a 2/3 vote by all of the states to hold a national constitutional convention. And if that were to happen, we would basically throw out most of the Constitution and kind of start from scratch. Obviously, that has never happened and more than likely will not, even though a few states tried it last year with a balanced budget amendment that would require the budget to be balanced every year. Because most states have it, they thought they could pass it this way, but it hasn't gone anywhere yet. So this top one right here is the only one that we've ever used on the proposal side of things. Now, to ratify it, you have to have either 3/4 of the states ratify the amendment in the time set aside by Congress. Usually it's 10 years, okay? Or there can be a special state convention called where the state would vote on it, not the legislature, but a special convention that the states would be calling of different citizens. And that happened via the 21st Amendment, which is an easy one to remember because when you turn 21, you get to drink, and the 21st Amendment overturned prohibition. So that's an easy one. So when the people want to drink, we have let them vote on the amendment. Everything else goes to the legislature. And you'll notice the arrows here. It can go in either direction. All right. So when 2/3 of the state of Congress passes it, it can either be a special state convention or the state legislatures can ratify it. All right. So that's your formal amendment process to the Constitution. It's 2/3 over here, 2/3, and then 3/4 on the state side. All right. But it's 3/4 on both instances. Doesn't say that here, but it is 3/4. All right. Now, we also informally can amend the Constitution. This is where we just change how the Constitution is read or interpreted or understood, but there's no formal amendment to it. It just kind of happens. All right. So as you see, we've amended it 27 times. All right. But we've done several since then where we just change the meaning of the Constitution without writing it in there. And these are easy to remember. There's 4 methods. You'll probably only remember 3, and you'll only be asked to remember no more than 3. But one is legislative action. This is if Congress passes a law that changes the meaning of the Constitution. In my earlier lecture on the House versus the Senate, you'll notice I said there were 435 in the House of Representatives. That's an informal change to the Constitution. They haven't written that in anywhere. It's just a law, and it's happened ever since 1929. But they did not pass an amendment. It just kind of informally changed. All right. Also, the Judiciary Act, which created the lower courts, that wasn't written in anywhere, but we now have a district court system that came in by congressional law. And same thing with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That outlawed literacy tests, which was nowhere in the Constitution, but it does now prohibit any kind of literacy test to vote. All right. The next one is executive action. I'm sure you're guessing where the third one's going. And this is the way presidents exercise their presidential authority. So, you know, a lot of talk has been about Obama and the executive orders pertaining to gun control. Well, that would then amend the Second Amendment via executive action. All right. Presidents use what are called executive agreements rather than a treaty, so they don't have to go to the Senate any longer, and that's just now a common fact. So presidents have amended how we interpret the Constitution. All right. Our third method is judicial interpretation and judicial review. So it's basically all 3 branches can informally amend the Constitution. All right, and then the judges can just change the way they interpret the laws and how they read into things. Marbury versus Madison is a great example. There's nothing in the Constitution on judicial review, the power to declare an act unconstitutional. But when the judges ruled that in Marbury, that power was basically given to the courts. So it's weird they gave the power to themselves, but that changed the meaning of the Constitution to also include judicial review as that additional power. Brown versus Board of Education integrated the schools. That changed the meaning of the 14th Amendment, which calls for no denial of equal protection under the law. And our final method is custom and usage. These are just traditions that have happened over time. Okay, something called senatorial courtesy is an informal change to the Constitution. That's where the president will go to appoint a lower court judge in a district court, and he will call up the senator from that state and ask who they recommend, and then the senator nominates the person, not the president. That's not anywhere in the Constitution. That's just how presidents do things. No third term. That was never written in the Constitution. Now, Roosevelt went against that, and that's why they needed the 22nd Amendment. But for 150 years, nobody ran for a third term because that was just a tradition in our Constitution. The State of the Union address that you'll see in a couple weeks, Woodrow Wilson actually gave that speech. It used to just be something you would write up and submit it to Congress. Him giving the speech changed what that meaning of the State of the Union is. All right, so this is your formal and informal amendment to the Constitution process. You'll need to know these as well as most of the amendments, and we'll play some games and do some activities with that in class to help you out. All right, thank you for listening, and we will see you in class tomorrow.